Good evening, and I will call the regular meeting of the Oak Ridge City Council for November to order. We appreciate your attendance here tonight in person and those that are viewing by electronic means or otherwise. Our invocation tonight will be led by Matthew Gaskins, the Oak Ridge Police Department chaplain. That will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and presentation of our colors by the Oak Ridge Composite Squadron Civil Air Patrol U.S. Air Force Auxiliary. And before I call Mr. Gaskins up, I want to say that many people in this room, including myself and folks across our city, lost a dear friend recently, Ms. Mona Leak, who passed away at 89 years of age. She was a tremendous person. She was an ambassador for Oak Ridge for decades. She was a dedicated public servant in the Anderson County Clerk's office and was a member of so many organizations and part of activities. She made life better for all of us. And I'd like for us to remember her family and thank them for her life. So with that, Mr. Gaskins, if you come forward, and if everyone please stand.
All right. Mr. Mayor and City Council, appreciate you all letting me come, and citizens of Oak Ridge as well. If you'll bow your head with me. Father God, thank you for this day, Lord. We just thank you for all that you give to us. We just ask that you continue to help our city grow. Lord, we ask that you watch over Chief Smith and the Oak Ridge City Police Department, also Chief Solomon and Oak Ridge Fire Department. We ask that you also watch over our city workers and bless each and every one of them. Lord, we just thank you for what you've given to us, and we ask again that you bless this city. In your holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen. States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Pro Tem Dodson.
Here.
Councilmember Gleason.
Here.
Mayor Gooch.
Here.
Councilmember Hammond.
Here.
Councilmember Hensley.
Here.
Councilmember Hope.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
First order of business, Madam Clerk.
So tonight, under proclamations and public recognitions, we have a recognition of some 2023 Scarborough youth. I believe Ms. Rose Weaver is here to make that recognition.
Ms. Weaver, it's always glad to see you here.
Yes, I'm looking out to see if they haven't made it here yet, but we started an empowerment program for our young people in the Scarborough, Oak Ridge community to try to recognize our young people, not the teenagers, not the high school students, but those that were primarily in our pre-K to elementary school. And from that, some 4 students participated in a program, and they will be, they've already been acknowledged by Mayor Gooch and you representatives, city councilmen, as citizens and community workers. They received that back in July during the Scarborough reunion. They've already been involved in several other programs. They raised something like $1,500 to challenge other persons in the Oak Ridge community, and all of those funds is going to go toward scholarships. Their names are, and if they're present, they're welcome to come forward, are Jamari and Lamaya Zuff, Talisha Threet, Kasaya Strickland, and Callie Foster. They participated in a program in September of this year to recognizing the desegregation of the Oak Ridge schools, where they gave their own testimonies of why it's important to know about history and to also support your community. We'd like to thank you all for supporting them. One of my committee members, Phyllis Alexander, as well as Sherry Simpkins, were committee members. These young people will be ambassadors, so whenever the Scarborough 85 cannot attend an event, these young people will be representing. They will have next year also to participate in the program, and I thank you all for supporting them.
Thank you, Rose. Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
We have a proclamation designating November 2023 as Oak Ridge Civil Air Patrol Month.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. There are none opposed. I'm going to ask Councilman Gleason to present the proclamation to Major Tim Waddell. Thank you, Major. Next proclamation, Madam Clerk.
We have a proclamation honoring the Oak Ridge Boys.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Accepting this proclamation will be Ms. Katie Watt.
Okay, so for all the people in this room that are older than I am, at least older than most of us, the Backdoor Pizza Saloon was where they would perform some of those things, and that was a long time ago. I was a little kid back then. So.
Ms. Watt, why don't you take just a minute and tell everybody what's going to happen next week.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm Katie Watt, president of Explore Oak Ridge. On Monday, the 20th of November, we will be dedicating a sign at the Grove Theater, and it is going to be added to the Tennessee Music Pathways from the State of Tennessee Tourism Department. And that sign will be for the Oak Ridge Boys, who actually started here in Oak Ridge during the Manhattan Project as a group called Wally Fowler and the Georgia Clodhoppers. They then changed their name. Probably good idea. when they were to perform at the Ryman
get that
Theater.
on the record.
And they decided to be the Oak Ridge Quartet. They were gospel, bluegrass, and a little bit of comedy. And then later the name was sold and was later changed to the Oak Ridge Boys because they wanted to sound a little more hip. And that's now the group that we have now. So we will have 2 representatives from the group here for the award ceremony, and we will be unveiling the sign then. So
And everyone's welcome to attend.
everyone's welcome to be there. It's open to the public.
Thank you
So,
very much.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, next item is elections, is that correct?
Yes, sir. We have elections to some city boards. And our first board that we're electing to is the Convention and Visitors Bureau Explore Oak Ridge Board. We have 1 vacancy, and we have 4 applicants. I'm not sure if they're here, but I'll call their names.
Yeah, stand
And
up.
if you're here, please stand up.
Stand up if they're here.
Jason Brown, Jonathan Jerzinski, Dr. Faye Martin, and Larry Vance. And you're going to vote for 1 person of those 4. And make sure you sign your ballot, and then our city attorney will read the results.
Councilman Hammond votes for Vance. Councilwoman Smith votes for Vance. Councilman Hope votes for Vance. Mayor Gooch votes for Vance. Mayor Pro Tem Dotson votes for Vance. Councilman Hensley votes for Vance. And Councilman Gleason votes for Vance. So
Okay.
it's unanimous.
So Mr.
Larry
Vance.
Vance is unanimously elected.
All right, congratulations to Mr. Vance. The next vacancy, Madam Clerk?
So the next one will be for the Environmental Quality Advisory Board. You're going to have, this is the adult representative. You're going to
Right.
have, you're going to vote for 1 person. There's 1 vacancy. And your nominees are Jonathan Jerzinski and Dr. Faye Martin. And you're going to vote for 1 of those.
Councilman Hammond votes for Drzezinski. Councilwoman Smith votes for Drzezinski. Councilman Hope votes for Drzezinski. Mayor Gooch votes for Drzezinski. Mayor Pro Tem Dotson votes for Martin. Councilman Hensley votes for Martin. And Councilman Gleason votes for Drzezinski.
Mr. Jonathan Jerzinski is elected.
Congratulations, Mr. Jazinski. Okay.
And then we do have two student rep vacancies on our Environmental Quality Advisory Board. We just received 1 applicant. That student's name is Miley Barna, and you can appoint her by acclamation.
Motion to approve Miley Barna by acclamation.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. There are none opposed. And Ms.
Okay.
Miley Barna will be the student representative.
And she
on
is
the
a junior,
club.
so she will get
She's
the
not-
2.
She's not here, is she?
I don't, She's
Okay.
a junior, so she'll get the 2-year term.
Great.
So we will have another one left that's a vacancy of a balance of an unexpired term that we'll fill in January. Okay, and the last one is for the Senior Advisory Board. Again, you've got 1 vacancy. You've got 3 applicants: Ann Donovan, Dr. Faye Martin, and Vicki Stout. And you'll vote for 1.
Councilman Hammond votes for Martin. Councilwoman Smith votes for Stout. Councilman Hope votes for Donovan. Mayor Gooch votes for Martin. Mayor Pro Tem Dotson votes for Martin. Councilman Hensley votes for Martin. And Councilman Gleason votes for Stout.
Okay, Dr. Faye Martin got 4 votes, so she is elected.
Okay, congratulations, Ms. Martin. And I would remind the other applicants who submitted their applications that there will be another round of elections to boards in January. Is that correct, Madam
Yes,
Clerk?
sir. Yes, sir. And applications will be opened up for those the end of this week,
And then they'll be open until
the end of December.
the end of December?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
Next item is the consent agenda.
With regard to the consent agenda, items B and C will come off of the consent agenda. We'll take them up in the next regular order. Is there a motion to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. So we're now on item B, receipt for the record of the Oak Ridge Heritage Railroad Authority Annual Report. I move to approve and receipt. All right, it's moved and seconded. Ms. Smith?
Yes, I asked to have this taken off the consent agenda because I was impressed with the report, and I wanted to thank Mr. Fee and Mr. McGill for their diligent stewardship and for providing us with an extensive and informed report this year. They've been pursuing grant funding for projects to ensure the integrity of the bridges on the rail line. Appreciate that. And also this year they reported about the interesting challenges they faced related to interactions with the company Carbon Rivers and with planning for the proposed airport. But it's clear that these two men have done important work for the city. I appreciate their efforts and wanted to make sure that they were thanked publicly for their work.
We all agree. Thank you so much. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Hensley?
We were talking, the railroad is owned by Heritage Railroad Corporation, a wholly owned subsidiary of Energy Solutions, but I remembered receiving a letter that came through council probably 6 months ago where Carbon River stated that they did not, they no longer wanted to use the railroad, but yet in here it kind of vacillates around, and what I read is they now claim they do. And the other question was, over here the Carbon Sweep is hoping to build a biodiesel recycling plant. Should be built. Energy Solutions estimating they will generate 5 to 7 carloads per week, but it doesn't say where. Is that in Heritage Center, or is that on the powerhouse site? And there's a third question here. However, after a review of their business plan, they indicated they would in fact need rail service. Well, that's here again, Carbon Rivers, and all of this, what I understood was anytime somebody claims they want to use a railroad in the future, it moves the clock back 2 years to 2 years for the National Transportation Board before it can be abandoned. And so to me, when I was reading through this, it got a little confusing based from what I already knew, but it sounds like we're talking about a tunnel for the airport.
Mr. Suggs?
Thank you, Mayor. I can speak only to partly of this. I'll have to investigate the letter from 6 months ago. I do know that the railroad owner, which is Energy Solutions, has reaffirmed their willingness or their desire to abandon the railroad.
It's to abandon? Is that what
To abandon the railroad. And there are there are about 3 different ways, my understanding, a railroad can be abandoned. I would have to get you a legal expert to get the exact ways, but the easiest way does require that the railroad have not been physically used for 2 years, and this particular spur has had some traffic on it, if I remember right, about a year ago. So I think the report, this is independent of the report. I'd be happy to spend some time tomorrow trying to research out the letter and see if there's a contradiction, but at this point, I think what's in there is probably correct.
Sure.
Mr. Fee, do you have any comments on this particular question?
One other question I would add, too, is that that Energy Solutions will require a financial commitment from the city to fund the abandonment. What, is that a big number or a little number or what?
I don't know. My name is Gordon Fee, 1064 West Outer Drive, Mayor, Council. The railroad is confusing at times. Yes, the cost of abandonment with the legal forms that have to go to Washington and everything is estimated to be tens of thousands. I don't know the exact number, but it is not cheap, and it requires a lot of interviews. And the confusing situation when it comes to Carbon Rivers is that we have had oscillation. Are we going to see traffic or are we not going to see traffic? As you well know, there are windmill blades out there and piled up in thousands of categories. Only a very, very small fraction came in by rail. They did a 10-car experiment in December a year ago. At that time, they were promising us that there would be extensive traffic this year and next year, growing up into the 500 category. They talk about the need for rail in two categories, one being inbound, bringing windmill blades and transition pieces in, and outbound being diesel fuel, they claim, and or they say fiberglass chips that people have told me might look like Wheaties. When they brought the 10 cars in, they were called low side gondolas. They had to cover them with a fishnet because they always wanted to fly away. When they came in with this experiment, it is our understanding it was not economically feasible compared to truck on inbound. They could make it economically feasible by getting what they call low or high side gondola cars. They're hard to find if there are any out there. And to the best of our knowledge, they have not pursued that. Energy Solutions is now not carrying any traffic through 2024 for them as they pursue the procurement of the land. So it's gone from a big need all of a sudden. Then when they originally approached Croad to buy, they said they didn't need, they were told there would be no railroad service, and they said that was okay. But then they went back and looked at their business model and said we need it both inbound and outbound. It looks
Doesn't
like
sound like you've got much business to model whatsoever.
Yeah, that's right. Outbound would require tankers and require some sort of gondola hopper cars. With respect to where Carbon Sweeps is, Charlie, 1401, that's where it is of the northeast corner of the Y12 or of the K25 site. Again, highly speculative. They're in the early design, trying to get money in there. So that's the situation with the railroad.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Fee. All right, any other questions? All those in favor of receiving the report indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
Next item is a resolution approving access to Oak Ridge Turnpike from Anderson County Tax Map 104 in Group A, Parcel 2.01, to provide ingress and egress for a new proposed residential development called Poplar Creek Townhome.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Smith, you had a question.
Yes. Well, first off, this is a request for access at a location across from Bradley Avenue, that for a new road to serve a development that would be built on the south side of the turnpike, near the West End Weigels, and they're looking for a four-way intersection. I think that's a great place, a very logical place for access to the turnpike from a project like that. My question has to do with possibility of additional areas south of the turnpike near the site being developed in the future. And it looks to me from the conceptual plat design that we saw in the packet that there would be opportunities for some additional roads to be extended connecting to this to create some efficiency in a road system in that area. Is that true? Or would other developments in that area have to have additional turnpike access?
I think they're going to be bounded by that creek, which is, I think
yeah.
they're as far
Yeah.
south as they can get. If you look at the
For the
flood
record,
line,
that's,
it's
Mr.
Pardon?
Flynn, let's say your name for the record.
by Popular Creek.
No, your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Roger Flynn. I'm the city engineer.
Thank you.
Anyway, the project is bounded by the creek. The flood line actually almost encroaches on that bottom property right there. So I don't think you're going to be able to extend those roads.
Well, I was thinking of the possibility somebody might want to bridge the creek. Also, I think there's some land adjacent to this that looked like it was undeveloped and could be developable. So I was just wondering whether there are some stubs on that. I don't remember what, I think it's called Road A. It looked like there might be a possibility of adding to that road if something else were being built there. But I'm not, planning and development would have a better handle on what's been posed for that development. So I was just hoping that we weren't going to have a situation of a whole bunch of short roads off the turnpike extending, requiring additional turnpike access in this vicinity.
I understand the question. It's not something that we considered.
Okay.
So I can't say 100% that something might not connect to it, but I don't believe it will.
Okay. Well, that's something for just dealing with planning and development, I guess. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Flynn? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? There are none. Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
Under final adoption of ordinances, you have an ordinance to amend ordinance number 27-85 titled A Personnel Plan for Employees of the City of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, as amended by deleting section 11.6 titled Military Leave for Reserve Training or Emergency State Service and substituting therefore a new section 11.6 titled Military Leave for Reserve Training or Emergency State Service for compliance with state law.
So move.
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions for staff? This is second reading. We've already had some discussion on this.
Yeah, there are no changes between first and second reading with the exception of completing the blanks that were in for the whereas to let you know that PAB did vote to approve it. So there is a substitute ordinance in your packet if you would move to place that on the floor. Thank you.
Moved and seconded. All in favor indicating agreement on the amendment, say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? There are none. So we're back on the ordinance as amended this evening. Are there any additional questions for the city attorney? Seeing none, let's go to the board. Ayes 7, no nays, and the ordinance is adopted. Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
Under resolutions, we have a resolution authorizing the purchase of new server storage equipment, software, and associated services from Insight Public Sector through the Omnia Purchasing Cooperative in an amount not to exceed $98,722.95.
Move approval.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Fitzgerald.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. This is an item that was brought to the Budget and Finance Committee on October 18th. It is a purchase of a storage area network replacement that is needed as part of our ongoing infrastructure replacement plan. The purchase is made, as described in the memo, through Omnia Partners, which is a cooperative which the city joined back in 2014. So the item would be purchased through the FY24 budget and equipment replacement fund. So I have Mr. James here if you have any specific questions, but this is a purchase that is a part of our ongoing upgrading of our IT infrastructure.
All right. Ms. Smith, do you have any comments on this as chairman of the
Yes,
Budget
Budget and Finance reviewed this, and I guess our bottom line would be that this is important as part of the upgrades we need to do and probably continue to do on a continuing basis, as we learned because from the incident we had earlier this year. So this is worth doing, and we heard good justification for it. I don't know if Sean or
Mr. Gleason, do you have
Derek has
comments?
further to say on that.
No, I mean, that was a good summation. We went into more technical detail about servers in a Budget and Finance meeting.
That's why it goes to Budget and Finance.
Yeah, we certainly appreciated that time, that education. Mr. Hammond?
Yeah, I'm good with it as well, but at the high level with regards to the technical component, it was, these were on-site servers as opposed to cloud-based servers, correct?
This is the, you want to address that?
Yeah, we did have some
It's,
conversation about that, and I think that at a high level, we can certainly establish
Sir,
that.
I'm John James, the IT manager. Yes, sir, this is on-site storage.
Okay.
We had discussed the possibility of one day being able to do that, and this will enhance our capability to be able to get there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments or questions for staff? Seeing none, we're on the board, and the motion is to approve. I-7 of nays. The resolution is approved. Next resolution, Madam Clerk.
A resolution authorizing the purchase of new core network switching equipment, licenses, and associated services from Insight Public Sector through the Omnia Purchasing Cooperative in an amount not to exceed $175,185.36.
Move for approval.
Ms. Fitzgerald.
Yes, sir. Likewise, this is the companion project that was brought to the Budget and Finance Committee. It is the replacement of end-of-life switching equipment that the city needs to upgrade the infrastructure. And this one's a little bit more involved. It will take a little bit more time in staging, but it is similarly being made through the Omnia Partners Cooperative, which the city authorized through resolution that's in the agenda packet.
Ms. Smith?
Well, we basically discussed these two items together, so I think what we said earlier applies equally to this. Thanks.
And the funding for this is in the 2024 Equipment Replacement Fund,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Okay. Any other questions on this particular item? Okay, we're on the board. The motion is to approve. I-7 of nays, and the resolution is approved. Next resolution, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fitzgerald.
A resolution waiving competitive bids and authorizing the purchase of 3 control panels for the Rarity Ridge wastewater lift stations from Nedrow and Associates Incorporated of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, in an amount not to exceed $136,000.
Ms. Burge. Oh, okay.
I'm filling in tonight.
You're filling in, okay.
Yeah. This is control panels for 3 of the 5 pump stations out there. The main station we've already done. What we're doing is updating the control panels so that we can put SCADA on them. The 4th one, we had some issues with getting the design for it and getting it ordered, so we're buying 3. These are being paid for with ARPA. It's one of the many projects that we're using that money for. And this is one of the Roane County projects, so we'll be able to share that with Roane County. And we will come back with the 4th one when we have it ready.
All right, Ms. Smith?
Yeah, just a question. Is it correct that the reason for taking this off competitive bid is that we need to be compatible with the existing equipment out there?
We standardized on the flight products, and these particular control panels are compatible with our existing SCADA. So yes.
Okay, thanks.
It's sole source as far as we're concerned.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Flynn? Seeing none, the motion is to approve. We're on the board. Ayes 7 and nays. The resolution is approved. The next item, thank you, Mr. Flynn. Next item of business is appearance of citizens. Citizens shall be permitted to address City Council about matters that are not on the agenda tonight. Any citizen wishing to do so shall raise his or her hand and proceed to the lectern, and after recognition, state your name and full address and the purpose of your appearance before council. Comments will be strictly limited to 3 minutes and shall relate to matters of city business. They shall not generally result in a formal response or action at the time of the presentation, because in most cases, neither the council nor the staff will be prepared to respond effectively. However, I may answer the question or direct the city manager to do so, or ask the city manager to work with the citizen to effect resolution of the matter. Statements that are purely political in nature will not be allowed, such as campaign speeches, announcements of candidacy for office, nor will announcements of a civic or social event that is unrelated to city business. Are there members of the audience wishing to address council? I'll start on my left in the back row. Yes, sir. If you come forward. I called on you first. Okay? And then we'll get her.
Well, thank you. My
Yes,
name
sir.
is Jim Rousey, and I live at 100 West Look Circle here in Oak Ridge. When my wife and I purchased our home a few years ago, we did so for a variety of reasons. Primary among that was it was a single-family home zoned R1, as were all of the 50 or so homes in our neighborhood. So about a month and a half ago, we heard that someone had bought a vacant home and they wanted to convert it into a group home for parolees. That was what we heard at first. So I began a quest to try to get some answers. I've had communication with a number of staff within the city government with a great deal of frustration, because today marks 1 month since my initial question to the city planner, who said, well, he heard something was going on, referred me to a staff attorney who told me that she would get back with me on the question of whether or not Tennessee could exempt R1 zone for group homes. A couple of weeks passed, still nothing. I've been back in touch, and finally today I did get an email from someone in the city attorney's office with that question. But the problem is that all of these things that I saw that you all passed for money, that money comes from taxpayers. And we have 50 or so homes in our neighborhood. We're all taxpayers, so we're essentially helping to support the purchase of all these things. We'd like for you, the city council and the city, to care about us. Not only care in getting back to us with our questions, which finally after a month I got some, but helping us to bring this situation to light. We have a neighborhood where we have kids who ride bicycles and skateboards and even a unicycle. We have mothers who push their strollers through the neighborhood. We have ladies who walk for exercise. It's a neighborhood that should retain single-family dwellings for single families and not a group home for any type of individuals who are attempting to get back into society.
Thank you, Mr. Rousey. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Kathy Strunk, and I live at 107 Westlook Drive. The house next door to me, 148 Westlook Circle, was sold to a couple, Stan and Patty Smith, who live in Oak Ridge near the golf course. They are turning the house into a rental for recovering alcoholics, wanting to rent it to 8 men with one as the manager. Stan said he didn't want to rent it to a family because he couldn't get $3,600 a month for it. I asked Stan and Patty if this would be a nonprofit. Patty said the paperwork and expense was too much, and Stan said it was just he and his wife working with the city. I have talked several times with Jennifer Williams in the city planning, and she shared the Tennessee laws that could allow this. I have several concerns about this. Number one, my understanding is that recovering alcoholics might fall under the category of disabled, and Tennessee State Law 1324-103 that supersedes any city provision or ordinance allows this to happen in single-family neighborhoods. But would not each individual person claiming to be disabled have to prove it before they are allowed to live in that house? Just because the owners make blanket claims about the disability doesn't mean it applies to everyone. Surely they need to show the residents have actual disability caused by their substance abuse, not just addiction or legal troubles. Number two, I think Tennessee State Law 1324-104 should apply to prevent 148 Westlook Circle from becoming a house for the transients. It says this part does not apply to such family residences which are in persons with disabilities reside when the residents are operated on a commercial basis. And surely with wanting $3,600 a month, that's a commercial basis. Number three, I do not know all the building codes, but I assume several would apply to a house with 8 unrelated persons living in a house that has 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. I have a petition signed by 64 people in my neighborhood, which was pretty easy to obtain since I know most of my neighbors. Lots of people use our circle as a great place to walk. We always take the time to say hello. The petition basically states that we want to keep the house at 148 Westlook Circle as a single-family residence. Someone who owns the house, lives there, and wants our neighborhood to thrive. We live in an area known as Peach Orchard, and my understanding is at one time many of the most influential people of Oak Ridge lived there. I consider this area one of the legacy neighborhoods that should be preserved. I bought my house 17 years ago. I put my heart, soul, and money into it, and absolutely love my house and this neighborhood. I always thought that buying in a single-family zoned area would assure that others buying in the neighborhood would live in the house and invest in the future of that neighborhood. A house with 8 men who are at best transient, with no real ties to the house or the neighborhood, is not a good fit. This may be lawful, but I question the ethics of this purpose. I would like to ask City Council to please stop this from happening, and if that is not possible, to make sure the owner is compliant.
Thank you, Ms. Strunk. And would you please give the petition to the clerk? Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm David Rye. I've been an Oak Ridge resident since 1985. For the last 17 years, I've lived at 100 West Overlook Drive, a house my wife, Marty, and I own in the Peach Orchard neighborhood. I'd like to address the Oak Ridge zoning ordinances that would keep this atrocity from occurring in our neighborhood, but I won't. I'm sure other people will address that. I'd like to talk about our neighborhood. Peach Orchard has a historical significance as being one of the first new housing expansions in Oak Ridge after World War II. It's a beautiful neighborhood that historically has been home to Oak Ridge city office holders, world-renowned cryogenic scientists, educators, DOE plant engineers, managers, and administrators. If you look around my neighborhood this evening, or if you look around here this evening, you'll see we're very diverse. We're a true melting pot of American society. We're black, white, Asian, Latin American, Spanish, gay, straight, Republican, Democrats, and independents. Most of us have lived in the neighborhood for many years, but we all come from somewhere else. Different regions, different states, even different countries. But we all chose Oak Ridge as our home. Next page. Oh, there it is. We all had one thing in common. We decided to make our home in Peach Orchard neighborhood of Oak Ridge. Today, we are teachers, school administrators, geologists, plumbers, business executives, former military, both enlisted and officers. Like me, most of us are retired now, but we didn't move to Florida. We all decided to make Oak Ridge our home. By the way, we are Oak Ridge taxpayers. We do vote, and we are united on this subject. That's why we're here tonight, united in opposition to the proposed use of 148 West Look Circle residents. You can't put lipstick on a pig. It's a halfway house. A halfway house is going to provide a revolving door to strangers to come into our neighborhood, strangers with serious issues and with problems that historically have a 37.6 reoccurrence rate. A halfway house that for a profit, $3,600 a month. We all hope that people with addiction issues get help, but our beautiful Peach Orchard neighborhood is not the place to do that. Please don't let them do this to our neighborhood. Thank you for your consideration of this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Anyone else wishing to address council? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm going to ask you to remove your hat.
My name is Jerome McKinnon.
And if you'd speak into the microphone, please.
My name is Jerome McKinnon. I'm an Oak Ridge resident. I was born in Oak Ridge Hospital at 67 years old. Retired military, retired ORNL National Laboratory. And I've been living at 146 West Look Circle since 1995. So that I'm right next door. My wife and I, we're right next door to 148. Just retired, effective from the laboratory, effective 1 November. And I thought I was going to be retiring, enjoying my home, enjoying the lifestyle that I've lived there in the neighborhood. It's a nice neighborhood, single-family units, children, a little bit of everybody living there. And so the individual that's moved into 148, I guess he's been here about 2 years, 2.5 years, moved from California, came here, lives in Knoxville, has no real investment, not really invested in the neighborhood as all individuals here are. So I just want to say that it's a transition home, and you're talking about maybe 8 to 12 individuals. So that what that transition tells me, because that house sits right next to where it looks, the side of it is here, and it looks directly in my wife and our garage. It looks directly on our deck. And the way that yard is landscaped, there's nowhere really for individuals to hang out at except for on a deck that faces everybody. It's not really a single-family unit homes. It's not really built for 8 individuals to be living there, because you're either going to be hanging out in the street or inside the house. And transition means that you can say the number of 8, but in reality, it could be anywhere, in a year's time, it could be anywhere from 8 to 10 to 12 different individuals. So the number is really not just really 8. It's going to be 8, maybe to 12 at one time. But in any particular month, you could have 2 new individuals, 3 new individuals, because the bottom line is it's money for the bed. You got to pay. It's got to pay, right? So the beds, you can't let the bed stay empty. So whatever the number of beds that the individual end up having in there, it's going to do will do whatever you can as soon as you can to get someone else back in that bed. But the real bottom line is that it's totally affected our whole neighborhood. It's totally affected me personally, my wife and I. because now there's, I guess, you're talking about a distance between that wall and maybe the back of the room, straight from my garage door to where those individuals.
Thank you, Mr. Ken. Your time's expired, but thank you, sir. I understand you. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. If you'll pull the microphone down a little bit closer to you and speak directly in the microphone.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Yes.
And council members. My name's Lorelei Jacobs. I live in the Peach Orchard neighborhood in 110 West Overlook. I'd like to echo the comments made by my articulate neighbors, but I would also like to actually mention code issues that I know you all know the code. I've had this opportunity now to look at it and learn some things, including that there are sections like 4.07, which says any use not expressly permitted is prohibited, and then they look at alternatives for use, and they say uses which would have a material adverse effect upon the surrounding property shall be denied. That's pretty clear that this would not be permitted. If you look at 5.03 for the single-family residential districts, R1A, R1B, and R1C, there is no allowance in the special exceptions that require a Board of Zoning Appeals approval that covers group homes for city code, okay? And in contrast, section 5.04 for R2, where there are a number of group homes already, the low-density district does have a special exemption requiring Board of Zoning Appeals approval for permanent and transient group care facilities. So that clearly was covered in the code for the city, and obviously there's no intent that a group home would ever be put in an R1A, B, or C area. And I'm sure all of you probably live in one of those areas too, so it'll come close to you next time if we don't deal with this now, unless it's already happened in the community and there's a precedent. It seems that this would be the precedent to stop. And, I've heard the state code supersedes any city code, but if you read that 1324, 100, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's ambiguous. And the part that talks about disabled people and the definition is very ambiguous, and all it talks about is what doesn't apply, so that pretty much opens up everything that you can imagine could be put in there. And I feel that I hope the city looks to protect its citizens. That's what I hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I am Eric Bishop of 105 Westlook Drive. You say I'm Circle. She's Drive. All right. And I own 105 West Overlook, so if I get double the time, I'll take that. So I won't be up here long. I've worked at Y12, I guess, almost 10 years. I moved to Oak Ridge 2 years ago, something. Wife and 2 sons. And so heard about this, and I really can't understand it. Sir, Eric Bishop?
Eric Bishop.
So I really can't understand this. They've already articulated everything that's going on, and I hope you'll take those concerns with great passion. But I really would like to understand from my city, since I live here now, why this is going on. But I'll tell you this. Most people in the plants don't live in Oak Ridge anymore. Is that accurate?
People, varies, but go ahead.
Okay, sir.
Right.
I get asked often why I moved here. I lived in East Knoxville before that, in Strawberry Plains. Okay. However, this moment goes is going to be the story I tell. So that's what everybody's wanting to know. How is Oak Ridge going to deal with this, with my wife, my 2 kids, Can I travel for work? Can I leave them here with this going on? Okay? Whatever gets told, whatever happens from this, however this goes, is the story that will get told in every circle I'm in at the Whitesville plant. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address council? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I do not have prepared statements.
It's okay.
I'm Leah Markham Estes, 130 Westlook Circle. We've lived up there for 24 years, have loved that neighborhood, moved up there because it is beautiful. It's quiet and very, very safe and secure. We had a small child. We lived on Kentucky Avenue, which was a raceway. We've tried very hard to stay in Oak Ridge. We had lots of choices to go elsewhere, and we didn't. People ask me why I stayed in Oak Ridge. Well, I love Oak Ridge. Moved here, been the director of the Art Center, was the director over there for 35 years. Felt like I was here for the city. I didn't make a lot of money. Matter of fact, I didn't make a living wage. By the same token, I felt it was important for the city. I'm going to speak from the arts perspective, the emotional perspective. I have a brother who has a home in Harrodsburg, Kentucky, and they moved a halfway house into his neighborhood. It's pretty much next door, like two across the street, one house down. It has people coming and going at all hours of the day and night. There are people that drive up, talk to people who come out of the house, pass things back and forth, and then they go away. All night long, there's traffic noise. The police are called, he tells me, at least 3 times a week. And now they're trying to sell this house, and guess what? It doesn't want to sell because nobody wants to buy next door or close to a halfway house. All of these folks here have put their lives into this neighborhood. We've chosen to be here. We expect and hope that our city council will understand that we are the citizens of Oak Ridge who are here, have chosen to be here, pay our taxes faithfully. We take care of the city. We do things in our city to try to represent, and we hope that the city council will help us now protect our homes, protect our children, protect our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Estes. Yes, ma'am. Hello?
Jill Ivanko.
Pull the microphone a little closer to you. There you go.
I'm Jill Ivanko. I live at 122 Westlook Circle. I love my circle. And honestly, I don't have anything prepared to say, but I'm backing what everyone else has said, and that's pretty much my feeling about it. Although I do have one thing to add. I came here from San Francisco, California, and I lived on the same block as a halfway house. I couldn't go into my yard because of broken bottles and syringes. Now, I'm not saying that everybody that lives in one has unresolved issues. I'm just saying it can happen, and I'm a nervous wreck now because I don't know what's going to happen. And if I was a person that needed a halfway house, I would like one that was closer to the city center where I could go to the park and I could go to the senior center and the library, and instead of being way up on the hill there and not have any walkable places to go to. So I don't know about all the rules, but I hope that everybody considers this and maybe rethinks what's going to happen up there. Thank you.
Ms. Ivanko, how long have you lived in Oak Ridge?
I moved here almost 3 years ago.
All right, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Barbara Grant. I live at 102 West Look Circle. I was raised in Oak Ridge. I graduated high school here. I went to college, and I moved to Atlanta. I was there for 45 years. My husband died, and I chose to come home. I could have gone anywhere. I was retired, and I had a little money. I chose to come home. I saw the place. I bought that house at 102 West Look. It needed to be painted, and it needed to be fixed up, but I had it done, and I love it, and I love my neighbors. You've heard them. How could you not like these people? These are good people. And I'm a widow. I live alone. I don't want I'm sorry. I don't want to be afraid to walk out of my house at night, and I'm not now. I feel comfortable in my neighborhood. Please, please keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait just a second. Step up to the mic.
I normally don't need a
We don't
mic.
need comments out in the audience. You step up to the podium, give us your name and address.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate
all right,
that so much. Thank you for letting me speak.
Yes.
Robert Walsh. I live at 119 Westlook. I've been there approximately 20 years, retired military. The only way a transitory house can function if it's licensed under the Department of Corrections or the Department of Mental Health. If it's listed under the Department of Corrections, it allows ex-felons who can be violent criminals, can be accused of arson or sexual assault. Now, while that's authorized, I know that's not what the statute had in mind, that you would allow ex-felons into a neighborhood where I think there's a family, correct me if I'm wrong, of 7 children less than a half a block away. So I think that is kind of the intent everybody's looking at. And if Tennessee does not consider alcoholism by itself a disability, doesn't that override the statute? That's my only comment, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Anyone else? What you said? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Tina Bailey, and I live at 137 Westlook Circle, right in their face. I walk out my door, I look at them. I look at the front door. I moved there a year and a half ago. I have custody of a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. 8. I have 8 grandchildren, and I have custody of a 2-year-old and 4-year-old grandchildren. I moved there because I felt safe there. I did not. The last place that I lived, first, let me go back. I've been a director of a jail ministry at Mount Pisgah Baptist Church in Oliver Springs. I was director for 14 years. I've seen a lot of stuff. I'm very cautious. I have actually placed transition houses in areas in this 3-county area. I placed them away from single residential areas. I also rented a transition house to an individual, and I would keep an eye on it. And I would just sit back in the back 40 there and watch traffic in and out. This man told me that his transition house would always be supervised. That was not the case. My son got killed a year and a half ago. He was a passenger in a car of a woman that was high. They both were killed. A tragic. They had a wreck and the car caught on fire and they both perished. I didn't have a panic attack. I didn't have anything. I ran up on the wreck. My first husband was killed the very same way in a semi-truck accident in Mississippi. I didn't have a panic attack then. The first day that the gentleman that bought the house told me that he had bought the house and what he had bought the house for, that night I had a panic attack. And I hadn't had one since my son was almost killed in 2002 when he fell backwards and he cracked his skull open, and they told me he may not make it then. That was my first panic attack, and I haven't had one since until the gentleman told me that he was moving 8 gentlemen, which I know from renting to another individual that had a transition house in a home that I had a rental house there, that 8 is usually not the case. 10, 12, 14 at the most that I had in a 6-person house, a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. And I finally asked them, I didn't really ask them to leave, I suggested that they leave.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Thank you. Your time's expired. Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? All right, now I come to you, Mr. Hensley. You had a question.
Yeah, I just had a question for staff, and I see Jennifer back there from the planning office. I don't remember seeing this on the planning commission, and did it go to the BZA for some kind of approval?
It has not at this point. I can give some more background if you would like.
Yeah, please.
Sure. So the property at 148 Westlake Circle, the new owners that purchased it have expressed to the neighbors and also to staff that they're interested in setting it up as a sort of a recovery home or something of that nature. The Peach Orchard neighborhood is zoned R1A, single-family residential, so that zoning does not allow a group home use by right or by special exception from the BZA. However, there is a Tennessee state law that exempts homes for persons with disabilities under certain conditions from any municipal or county zoning requirement. So a home that met the conditions of that state law can be permitted anywhere a single-family home is permitted. So from a staff perspective, I've spoken to the new owner. I've also spoken with the city attorney, and we're trying to get information from the new owner. Who I think it's important to note there is no one living in the house right now. It is not operating currently. So we're trying to get information from them to see how or if they could fit within this state law. I've also advised them to reach out to the fire prevention office to see if there are any fire codes that would be applicable to their use, because those codes are not exempted by state law.
All right, so at this point, there hasn't been any application of any kind made to the Planning Commission.
Correct. It's just been a conversation with staff.
All right, Mr. Dotson.
Well, first and foremost, I'm looking at some numbers tonight. I'm thinking 8 to 10 people who came to a city council meeting and wanted to voice their opinion about something that's happening in their neighborhood. And I identify with you, if this was happening in my neighborhood, I'd be at the city council meeting and I would be talking about it and asking council and staff to look into this and see what we can do to correct this. Again, you have some people who couldn't come tonight. We have over 60 people on a petition that are supportive of your position. And I really appreciate the diversity of the people who are living there. And I'm talking young, old, different cultures. I think that's terrific. And the fact that you all have decided to make Oak Ridge your town. I mean, a lot of people don't. And that's one of the things that we continue to do is we try to encourage people to be residents of our community. Now, moving forward, how do we address this? And I think Ms. Williams has talked to us a little bit about how we can do that. It hasn't been approved by the Planning and Development Committee yet. I think we have to have some more conversations with regard to that. I'm sure Ms. Rackard can help us as well as our city attorney, and our city manager can weigh in on that as well. But again, I'm just very thankful for the very good argument that you made, not necessarily against a halfway house, but for your neighborhood. For your neighborhood. I think you deserve to keep your neighborhood the way it is. Again, halfway houses. There are places that we could situate something like that. But again, I think we need to stay the course and stay with the neighborhood that you all have grown to love. Thank you.
Mr. Hammond. Mr. Hammond, and then I've got a few comments.
One, thank everybody for coming out. I absolutely appreciate that. And then two, I thank you for sharing your stories tonight. I believe there's absolute power in sharing one story. And I also appreciate the spirit of community that you bring. It's not often you see a unified community or people who know their neighbors anymore. So I can certainly appreciate that. A real quick question. I guess what I'm hearing is, did this need to go to Planning Commission based on the state exception law? For what I'm hearing, it doesn't need. I think it should or could, but I'm just wanting to make sure I heard you clearly when you came to the microphone.
Well, let me interrupt. And
Sure.
I apologize.
No,
but
absolutely.
We don't. Economic and community development does not need to be opining on that issue.
Correct.
Okay, let's don't get in front of our headlights here.
Correct.
I'm not going to do any statutory interpretation from the dais.
Correct.
But I want a memo from the city attorney as quickly as possible, because I just there's lots of definitions involved here, and as it relates to people with disabilities, how that is defined, and I deal with regulations all the time as a healthcare lawyer. So, but I want the city attorney's opinion before anybody else, in terms of city staff, responds to the citizens. I mean, we need to know what we think our position is and what our rights are to enforce our zoning laws. And as far as I'm concerned, we're going to enforce them to the greatest extent possible. So, Ms. Rackard, I know you've got a lot on your agenda, but this one needs
I can
your
get
immediate
that
attention.
to you. I can get you a memo that addresses that statutory provision. It does say that if you've got 8 or fewer unrelated persons with disabilities living in a home together, and then you can have up to 3 support staff, that they are counted as a single-family residence. But there are also other provisions in there that make exceptions. So one is it can't be operated on a commercial basis. And then there is some other language about if the individuals, because of their disabilities, have certain criminal issues or some other issues. So it jumps around in the statute a lot, so it's probably going to be a very lengthy memo.
That's fine.
And it will just be at this point on the statute, because right now we don't have the information from the homeowner.
All right, Mr. Hammond, I apologize.
No apologies necessary, and I'm right there with you. And the primary reason why I was asking is not in so much forward-looking, honestly, in so much as it was past. It sounds to me like something has already been communicated to people, and so I'm just trying to make sure I've got clarity on what has been communicated so that I can then package my questions accurately. So I'm in agreement with you. I'll go just right up front and say whether legally or not, I would not support putting this transition home in this community. Needless to say, I absolutely empathize and identify with the need for transition homes. I would also beg us to wrestle with the question with, if not here, where? Because usually that's the primary challenge with trying to create these types of things. There's nobody who wants a transition home near them, and that's understandably so. I wouldn't, but I would also ask us to, as we process where we don't want to put it, we ask ourselves, where can we put it in Oak Ridge so that we at least create some opportunities for those who are facing this need. It's a very real need. It's a very real challenge, not just facing Oak Ridge, but facing this nation. So I would not agree with putting this here. I would not vote. And my hope is that we can identify ways to protect this community. By that statute, you almost could put a halfway house anywhere. So in theory, you can say, hey, I want to buy this house, and I'm going to kind of create this, and you can almost put one anywhere in Oak Ridge. I don't think that's necessarily the spirit of that particular law, and that's sort of what I wanted to make sure I put out there. If not here, where? I wouldn't support here, but my hope is that there can be some conversation about possibilities that might be viable options.
Mr. Hensley.
Yeah, just, having been on the planning...
Ms. Smith and then Mr. Dodson. Go ahead.
Okay. Having been on the planning commission for more than half of the last 40 years, I know that there's some basic rules in there about protecting the value of the neighborhoods. We're supposed to consider that when we do anything on the planning commission, and that's one of the issues that I've had with some of the more dense houses that we've had here lately. But this is a prime example where the quality of life of the neighborhood it could be affected greatly. So I would very much like to not have to support this.
Ms. Smith.
Yeah, I'm aware that we do have several transition homes in the city of Oak Ridge. And when I was listening to the presentations, I was thinking about the issues that some of the neighborhoods have had with those homes, but also thinking about the restrictions that I was rather sure I remembered, although not in great detail, that have applied to those homes when they're established. And restrictions like not being commercial and having a truly responsible entity running the show with supervision on site and so forth are really, really important. And number of people is also really important. I think that some have been denied because there wasn't enough space in the house for the number of people they wanted to bring in. And if to the extent that anything is required by state law, we do need to look really, really hard at those requirements because they make a big difference. The idea of a commercial operation, possibly with nobody on site to supervise it, is really, really scary. And it sounds like that's the impression the neighborhood's gotten. I'd like to say I don't believe any of us had heard about this until tonight. So we were sort of being accused of having approved something that we had no clue about. I want you to realize that we were not involved in any decision process, and this is news, and I think we're all looking to figure out what can be done.
Okay. Mr. Dodson. No, I'm sorry. You don't. No, we don't do that. I understand that, but you can't come up to the podium. You can't disrupt the meeting. I'm sorry. Well, everything has to be said in the microphone for the record.
Okay, I certainly appreciate you bringing that up because the monitoring of this is under the Department of Mental Health.
Correct.
And it's probably a mile and a half long, the regulations, which require a full-time doctor 24/7. So who within the Oak Ridge community would be monitoring it to see that it's operational? Because I've looked, and there's no one here. The only person authorized to check that is out of Knoxville, and they have over 180 of these transitory homes in East Tennessee, which kind of explains why most of these things have a real problem when they move into residential areas. And so I would just ask who would let us know what the attorney decides and who will be monitoring this on a regular basis to make sure, since we do have the Children's Museum less than 2 blocks away also. So thank you for your time. I appreciate that. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, but I remember you campaigned.
Mr. Dodson.
Did he vote for you?
Just joking. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So one of the things I'd like to ask Ms. Williams to do and our city staff is I'd love to know this, and if you could supply this for all city council members, is possibly locations that we have in the city of Oak Ridge for transition homes. I'd like to see that. And then I'd also, I would just echo this. I mean, there's a precedence being set for certain locations, but also, I think Ms. Smith brought this, maybe a precedence being set for denying some of those locations. So I want to get some information. I want to get some data under my belt so I can think about this. But again, I'm going to echo this, and I think most, if not all, of our council members will agree with me. I hate to put words in your mouth, but I think we respect the dignity of your neighborhood and trying to keep that intact moving forward. We just have to, according to what the mayor said, and he's right on this one, we need to do this legally and see what we can do with regard to that before we go forward to Planning Commission and those entities.
All right. Any other comments on this matter? Again, we want to thank you all for coming here tonight, and we will follow up very, very quickly. And I understand your concern. And again, I'm sorry we didn't, at least most of us didn't know anything about this before tonight. All right. Next item of business. Let's see. Announcements and schedules. Mr. Heeman? Anything from you?
There we go. We do have a regular Budget and Finance Committee meeting scheduled for Wednesday. Chairperson Smith is unable to attend that meeting, and we would like to cancel that if there are no objections.
Consider it canceled.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anybody on council related to announcements or scheduling? All right. Requests for new business items or future briefings. I think we just had one. So that goes to the top. That goes to the top of the list. Mr. Heeman, do you have a report tonight?
Yes, sir. A very brief report. The water from the fire hose is very sweet. I will tell you that
It doesn't matter how sweet it is. It matters how fast it's coming at you.
It's coming fast.
If it's coming fast, it doesn't matter if it's sweet or bitter. You don't know the difference.
But that's good. I have met with all department heads. I've got one council person meeting in the future. Met with Dr. Borchers. Attended a land bank work session. Industrial Development Board. Do want to thank our council people for invitations to the ADFAC and Torchbearers meetings. It was great to see the heart of the community present in those meetings. Also are in the process of scheduling some DOE meetings. Katie Watt with Explorer Oak Ridge, got to spend some time with her today. Also spent some time with Charlotte Catron with the Housing Authority. Scarborough 85 Committee, I got to meet all of them today. I can say now that I've met Ms. Weaver, which was really great to see what that group is working on. Been reading a lot of plans and reports. Deputy Manager Jack has taken me around to see the animal shelter, the airport locations, a lot of things. I'll actually be touring rec facilities with Mr. Hetrick Thursday. Mayor, I believe you and I will be at ETAC on Friday. And have actually started looking today at formulation of strategic plans to just kind of get some general ideas on paper based on the things that I've seen. And over the next few months, I'll have a more formal manager's report for you.
Mr. Hanson.
Yeah, and you had said that you had been talking to our economic development specialist about the issues at the mall site and all the restrictive covenants and all the paths to negotiate.
Yes, and had looked at some names of some additional people that might be interested in looking at Oak Ridge as well, and reached out to, I believe it was 4 or 5 of those this week. That's all I had, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
Ms. Rackard? All right. Anyone else? Council comments, questions? Seeing none, we are adjourned. And again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your presence and being here. We're adjourned.